The public has a long-held fascination with detectives. Detectives see a side of life the average person is never exposed to. In this podcast series, I Catch Killers with Gary Jubilant, I'll be interviewing a whole range of people you come across as a detective, including police, bad guys and victims. I spent 34 years as a cop. For 25 of those years I was catching killers. That's what I did for a living. I was a homicide detective. I'm no longer just interviewing bad guys. Instead, I'm taking the public into the world in which I operated. The guests I selected have amazing stories from all sides of the law. The interviews are raw and honest, just like the world they inhabited. No one who steps into the world of crime comes out unchanged. Join me now while I take you into this world. This episode of I Catch Killers contains conversations that some listeners may find confronting or triggering. Discretion is advised. Welcome to another episode of I Catch Killers. I'm both excited and slightly nervous about today's guest on I Catch Killers. I'm excited because we're going to hear from someone who has an interesting story to tell. It's a sad story about loss, death and punishment. In its most simple form, it's a story about a young man who was killed at a party. A scuffle led to a person falling out the first floor window. Two young men were charged with the murder, one was acquitted and one was convicted. We'll be talking today with the person who was convicted of the murder. He spent 13 years in jail. He went in his teens and came out in his 30s. At the time he was in prison, he'd been selected to represent Australia at the Commonwealth Games for boxing. It was a proud moment for a dark-skinned kid from Ethiopia to be representing his chosen country. Because of his conviction and imprisonment, that did not happen. We can't talk about this matter without also considering the victim. He was a young man. He was only 22. He lost his life, so on the surface it's hard to have any sympathy for today's guest. Sometimes, however, things are not as clear-cut as they seem. Although convicted by the courts and having his appeal against conviction dismissed, our guest is still fighting to clear his name. Currently, there is an application to the Victoria's Attorney-General for a petition for mercy. Today's guest has courageously agreed to come on I Catch Killers to tell his story. He knows I'm an ex-homicide detective who spent the majority of my career putting away people for murder. That in itself should make for an interesting conversation. Since being released from prison in 2018, our guest, who kept up his boxing training in prison, is determined to fulfil his potential in the professional boxing ring and is aiming to gather as many titles as possible. Currently, he is the Victorian Professional Cruiserweight Boxing Champion and is at present in a training camp preparing for his next fight. We're actually recording this episode from Project 180 Gym in Brisbane. Stupidly, whilst getting to know the guest in preparation for the podcast, I mentioned that I did a bit of boxing. Stupid me. So our guest suggested, whilst recording the podcast, perhaps we should get in the ring together and do some sparring. This is not going to be fun. So let's sit back and have a listen to our guest's story before I get punched around the boxing ring. Khalid Baker, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Thank you so much for having me on board, Gary.
I must say, the title of the podcast, given the circumstances and your story of I Catch Killers, it seems inappropriate because having a look at your case, there's questions that I've got about it that we'll discuss during the podcast. But the thing that impressed me most when I first met you and we first started speaking about possibly coming on the podcast is the empathy that you showed for the victim in this matter. And that told me a lot about you as a person. You had been through a lot. Some people might say 13 years in jail for a crime that you've always maintained your innocence, and for good reason. But you still had empathy for the victim, who was only 22 years old, and also his family.
Yes, at the end of the day, he's a human being. Our family members lost one of their families. If it was the other way around, and I've lost a brother or something like that, the pain will be always there. And at the end of the day, that night changed my whole life, but it's changed my whole life in so many different ways, where I'm looking at things from every angle, where I'm looking at it from the family's angle, where no one really knows what really happened but the parties who were there. And at the end of the day, you have to have sympathy for the family because they lost someone who's a loved one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it did resonate with me the fact that you could identify with that, because some people might come out of your experiences bitter, and that's the other thing that came across in speaking to you, that you've looked back and said, okay, well, this happened to me, but I'm going to move on with my life, and full credit to you.
Thank you so much.
In that regards.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just believe, in life is so many sad stories, and a lot of people just use that sad story to stay where they are in life. But at the end of the day, I honestly believe things happen to you in life, and you can use it as a positive or a negative. And I don't want to use what's happened in my life as a negative. I want to use it to drive me to be a better person, to pay it forward in the sense of help another person out, and not let what's happened to me to happen to someone else, and show to other people whatever you go through in life, you can still be successful moving forward. It's just about that drive of not saying I can't, saying that I can.
It's a good message to carry, isn't it, for everyone? Like the one thing life can guarantee is there's going to be setbacks.
100% is going to be setbacks.
I think that it's how you react to those setbacks that define you as the person that you are.
Yeah, 100%. And the setbacks are not always a bad thing. A setback sometimes stops you and makes you reset.
Yeah.
That's just what I think. Yeah. It makes you reset and thinks, oh, what do I have to do now? Because I've just had this setback. What do I have to do to be better? And how am I going to do it? And I got to put a game plan in, and that's the things that I've done in my own life.
Okay. Well, look, so we fully understand your story. Let's talk about your childhood. You were born in Saudi Arabia.
I was born in Saudi Arabia.
Your parents are Ethiopian?
Yes, Ethiopian.
And what age did you come to Australia?
I came here about 4.5 years old,
right.
To Melbourne, living in a suburb called Clayton at the time.
You came through Somalia, I believe.
Yes.
Do you have any memories of those times?
I don't really have too many memories of Somalia, but I have memories of Saudi and everything else. But the stories that my parents have gone through to come to Australia, it's a very tough story. And I remember a little bit of memories, but not too much. But living in the refugee camps and all, I remember a little bit of it, but not too much.
Right.
But what my parents have told us, it was a tough time for them when the civil war broke out in Ethiopia and they had to leave, and the things what were happening and what they were seeing, and what my parents wanted was just a better future for their children, and they would have done anything to get that for them.
How many siblings have you got?
It's 6 of us, including myself.
So a big family.
Yeah, well, big family. It's always good to have a big family. I just think,
yeah. It's fun, and all the dramas that come with having a big family.
Yes.
And having spoken to your sister Muna, she looks out for you.
Oh, she's my number one supporter. Like with our family, we all had like pairs. We came with my 2 older brothers had each other. Yeah. It was me and my sister. Then was my brother and my little sister together. But my sister was my best friend growing up, and still best friend now.
Yeah.
And she supports me with everything. She helps me out with everything. She's my admin woman at the same time. She's switched on with everything.
Oh, she's got your best interests at heart. I know in speaking to her just about this, and I wasn't gonna cross her.
No, she's very switched on.
Yeah.
I'm a boxer now, but I'm still afraid of her sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I got that sense. When, okay, all right, whatever you say, Muna.
Yeah.
But no, lovely lady.
No.
So you grew up in Melbourne then? So
I grew up in Melbourne all my life, and it was.
How was your childhood like immigrating to it? Could you speak English?
No, I couldn't speak English. It was hard coming to a country when I didn't speak I didn't speak English. It was tough. See, for myself, I never seen colour.
Yeah.
To me, it was just everyone was normal, but everyone else seen colour.
And you would have stood out.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, and I never looked at myself like a black kid or nothing. I just thought I'm a kid, you know what I mean? Like I'm like everyone else, but it wasn't like that. people looking at me. It was
when did you realise you were different in the eyes of the community that you're growing up with in Australia?
I think in prep,
Yep.
like kids used to just like black, and go back to your country, and I'm like,
How old were you then?
I was 6 years old,
Yeah,
but I just didn't I just didn't understand it. Like, and I used to say to my mum, like, why are they like that? You know, she's like, you're different, and she goes, nothing wrong with being different.
Yeah.
She goes, what makes you different makes you special. And my mum always used to say that, but I didn't understand that. But I just wanted to be like everyone else. I didn't want to be different. I just wanted to be normal.
Well,
like,
at that age, you want to just fit in, don't you?
yeah, just want to fit in, and I knew at an early age that I was a black kid and I didn't look like everyone else, and as much as I tried to fit in, it just never did. It just never happened.
Did that impact on you?
A little bit, yeah. It was tough. It was tough growing up, because you're trying to have friends and go over to friends' houses, and you see people's like family, like their family members looking at you, like, what's that black kid doing here? And you can hear it, like, because you'd be in another room playing PlayStation, and I just didn't understand why it was like that. Like, when kids came to my house, we didn't speak like that. It was just a friend over, but when I went over to other people's houses, but I think it was just because they weren't around ethnic people a lot, and that's what was different. Where I just thought,
in the community that you grew up in, Melbourne, was it multicultural at that stage, or was it?
No, not really. It was a lot of. It was just Australians, Italians, Maltesers, and that was really all.
And it's funny how it evolves, isn't it? Because the Australians the Italians would have experienced that 30 years before,
exactly.
And now we look at the Italians and go, well, yeah, they belong here as much as anyone, and it's funny how it evolves. But I would imagine, and also that your parents coming to a new country with 6 kids. It must be tough on them.
It was tough because my mum was a stay-at-home mum, looking after the kids. Dad just went to work, and Dad didn't speak English that well, but he just worked all the time, 2 different jobs. Just try to put food on the table for us, but we didn't see him as much. When growing up as kids, Dad was always working, Mum was always home, just trying to deal with us 6 kids. And having 6 kids, it's a lot, because everyone has their own different emotions and behavioural problems or whatever it was. And for me, it was tough. I found school hard, and Dad didn't understand why, and Is there something about school that it just didn't click with you? It was just like everyone was good at something, but I wasn't good at school.
Right.
Like, when it came to sports, I used to
shine at
sports. Just shine. Like, anything I touched, like football, soccer, running, anything. I was just the best at it, and I was just good at it. But when it came to the work stuff, I was just it just went over my head. I just didn't understand it, and. And later on, we learnt that I had I was dyslexic.
Right.
But see, them days,
it wasn't diagnosed.
Yeah, it was. People didn't even know what it was.
Just try harder.
Yeah, it just was like try harder. Yeah, exactly. And it was just it was a different time. And,
okay. And your teenage years growing up.
Teenage years, that was a little bit more tougher, because even going to high school and all. Kids were a lot vicious, a lot meaner.
Because you were different?
Yeah, it was because I was different, and just got in some fights, and I just didn't want to be at school, and I just wanted to I wanted to leave school early. And my dad used to say to me, if you're gonna leave school, you're gonna work. And I was like only 13 years old at that time, you know. And that's how my dad knew, like, because he grew up with a family of 13, and his father passed away early, and he was the man of the house, and he had to go out and work, and never really had a childhood, because my dad had to step up as a man and take care of his family. And
Did you make life hard for your parents?
I did.
You got into a bit of trouble?
Yeah, I got in a little bit of trouble. Like, it just started in high school first, because it started in school first, because I wasn't that good at school, and the way I used to deal with it is when teachers used to ask me to read something or whatever it was, I used to just start trouble in the classroom to get kicked out. It was my way of protecting myself.
Yeah.
And then they just didn't understand, and it was just a few teachers who knew what was wrong, and see, they tried to help, but them days it wasn't enough programs or anything to help people like me, or people who had the dyslexic problem that I had, and I was just at the principal's office all the time. Just detentions and that's just how it was.
Okay, so
that's how it was for me.
And did that eventuate to getting in trouble with the law? In those days.
I got kicked out of school, and I started hanging around with kids on the streets, and just getting in trouble, just what young kids do. I'm not saying all people do it, but for me at that time it was just being a young little hooligan and just trying to make friends and making friends in the wrong places, and that's when I met
stupid shit.
Stupid shit, and that's when I met my trainer James Rosler at the time. I remember it was about 10 of us at the front of my mother's house, and my mum was just telling us off to like get your friends away from the house. And I remember it was about 15 guys running down the street, and we were like 13 or 14 at the time, and I was a smart ass, and I said to my mates, I'm like, who's these people running down the street? I said to the trainer, I didn't even know. I go, what is this, a running class? He started laughing. He goes, no, it's a kickboxing class. I go, oh yeah. He goes, it's down the street if you want to come. And I said to the boys, let's go. We'll go see what's happening down here. And we went to his gym, and it was in his backyard, in his garage. And I was always a very confident person when it came to sports. And the trainer asked me, have you fought before? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a fighter, And he's like, have you ever fought in the ring? I said, no. I said, but I know how to fight. And he goes,
nothing like confidence.
Yeah. And I said, can I spar? And he looked at me, he goes, do you want to spar? I said, yeah. He goes, but kickboxing's different, you know? I'm like, yeah, so I kickboxing, boxing, all the same stuff for me, And he put me with his best boy at that time. And I remember getting rid of him in the first rounds pretty quick. And he looked at me and he's like, oh, there's something about him. I was only about 58 kilos, like I was weighing nothing. And he was about, I still remember this, 140 kilos. And he goes, I'll jump in the ring with you. And he was about 140 kilos. And I looked at him and I go, how can this bloke be a kickboxer with a big stomach and all? And I remember finishing that sentence in my head, and he kicked me twice in the head. And I was stunned. I was like, and then I tried to box him straight away. Then he kicked me a few times in the legs, and I just dropped on the ground. But I got back up, and he liked that confidence. And he goes, enough. And I said, no, it's not enough. He kicked me one more time.
So it's testing out your character.
Testing it out. And he didn't mind it. And I didn't come back to the gym for about 2 weeks. And he seen me one day. I was at the movies, and he goes, what happened? I said, listen, I'm not a kickboxer. And he started laughing. He goes, come back, I'll teach you how to box. And that's where my boxing career started. And started boxing straight away from there. And it was good because it gave me structure. And I honestly believe with young kids these days, they need that structure. It's good to have structure. And he gave me that structure. I still remember he used to make me cut his grass on a Saturday morning. And I'm like, what do you want me to cut the grass for? He goes, listen, cut the grass. I used to just cut it the way I knew how to cut it. And he goes, nah, straight up and down. And he goes, I want the straight lines. I'm like, why? I said, cutting the grass is cutting the grass. He goes, if you're going to do something, do it properly. Do it once.
Good
do
lesson
it properly.
In life.
And he put that in me, and I've always said, if you're going to do something, do it properly. Don't do it half-hearted. If you're going to do it half-hearted, don't do it at all. And there's
so many stories of kids that get direction when they whether it's boxing, and that's the stories that we hear quite often, but in anything, if they get a passion for something, to keep them in the right direction. So your life has almost two parts, doesn't it? Because you got the pre-incident and life before that. Did you have any I think before the incident that led to your charge of murder, You were competing very high level boxing.
Yeah, I was beating the best in Australia, and I won the Victorian title, the Australian title. I was going to represent Australia in the 2006 Commonwealth Games, and I was just flying. I was loving it. I couldn't wait to represent my country and win the gold medal. That's what I honestly believe. I knew that nothing can stop me but myself. And it was just, I remember I was fighting guys who would have like 60, 70 fights, and I was only at like 8 fights at the time, and people like, hey, how are you going to win this fight? It was just, I just believed in myself so much. And then people say, you got to chase your dream. I don't believe about chasing, because if you're chasing something, you're never going to get it. Don't chase something. Make it happen. Put it in your head and say, I'm going to do it.
So that was the mindset.
Yeah, that was the mindset. It was like, I'm not chasing nothing. Yeah. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to get that gold medal. That's how I looked at it. Yeah. It's like, that's mine. The only thing I have to do is put that hard work in, just go and pick it up. And that was just that mindset that I had.
And that so did you have your life direction in Commonwealth Games, represent Australia in the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, like that was what was coming up at that time. If it was the Olympics, I would have headed to the Olympics, but at that time the 2006 was going to be the Commonwealth Games.
And to get to that level, you really have to have a commitment and live a clean lifestyle.
I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. It was training 3 times a day. I used to run 15 Ks every single night. My trainees, we used to train in the morning. It was 2 hours training in the morning. Then we'll do a 2-hour training in the afternoon. Then he'd go home, drop his stuff off and pick up his bike. And we used to live around the corner. Yeah. I used to drop my bag off. Then I'll go for a 15K run, and he used to be with me. And we used to spend all day, every day together, because we had that dream to succeed, and he believed in me as much as I believed in myself.
That's what you were working
and it was just towards. Like we're working together. Yeah.
So then the night that it happened, and it was on the 27th of November 2005.
Yes.
And I just described the incident just briefly, then you talk us through it. It was it occurred in the early hours of the 27th of November 2005. A party was in full swing in a converted warehouse in Melbourne, and there was about 200 people there. Number of fights broke out, and it resulted in a 22-year-old man, Albert Snowball, falling 5 metres from a first floor window, hitting his head and dying 3 days later. Before we talk about it, and I'm sure you won't have a problem with this, because we're going to talk about it, and I want to get your account of what happened on the night. But as we started right at the beginning of the podcast, and when I first met you, that you do have empathy for the
Albert.
victim, for Albert.
Yeah, I don't want to say victim. I don't want. I'd rather use his name, Albert Snowball.
Okay.
Yeah. If you don't mind.
And that's me dragging stuff in from my policing career and break it down. But I want to look at things, and it's quite interesting you make that. But at the sentencing, when you were convicted of murder, Albert's father spoke, the impact that's had on him. And if I could just read a brief thing out, because I think this is acknowledgement of Albert and the fact that, it was a tragedy all round. Lives changed.
I still remember what his father said.
Yeah. Life changed for a lot of people. So Albert from Perth was 22 years old at the time of his death. At the sentencing, Albert's father, Jonathan Snowball, talking about his son, said, "Albert Snowball was my firstborn son. I sat him on my knee. I read to him. I carried him against my chest. He was a good, honourable human being. It's not an easy thing to watch your son die. We put him in a box and we burnt him. We saw his ashes disappear in the ocean. This is not the future I cherish for him." And I don't think anyone that listens to that can't understand the pain that family went through. So I just wanted to put that up front, and that now we'll talk about what actually happened, because I'm a homicide detective, and I've looked through this and what I've seen, and there are some huge issues there, isn't there?
Big issues.
How you got convicted of the murder.
Yeah.
And I say that because I really wanted to get a sense of what I'm dealing with here, and I looked through the case, and I see issues all over the place about a murder conviction. But let's hear your story. So what happened on the night? Talk us through it.
Caught up with some friends that night. It was the first time I went out for a long time. Went to I think it was like a warehouse party. I still don't remember what it was, a warehouse party, what it was. We drove there, we got to the warehouse, went upstairs. LM was performing that night. He performed. It was a good night. It was something different.
And LM, and just so people understand who we're talking about, LM was a juvenile at the time, was 17, so his name can't be mentioned. But LM, in fact, is the person that said he was the one.
He's always said
scuffle
that. With Albert.
And so just so people understand what we're talking about here. So.
And LM bring a friend at the time. His name was Ali at the time. Anyway, Ali was intoxicated. He was on drugs. Me and LM were on the dance floor after he was finished performing.
And what was he performing as?
It was an upcoming like rapper / DJ.
Okay.
And he was pretty good. And LM tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I think Ali's getting himself into trouble." And LM went over to break up whatever was going on. I didn't really see what started it or what happened, and all I seen was when LM went over to break it up, he ended up getting into the scuffle, and I went over and I got myself into the scuffle too because I seen LM in it, and the fight broke out. Then we were trying to get out of the venue because it was just men coming more and more. It was just, I was only 18, LM was only 17, and I think Ali was 19 or 20 at the time.
Yeah.
We were just young kids at the time, and we were like scared, and the fight broke out. We were trying to leave. We ended up getting through the doors, went downstairs. Albert came out, started yelling at Ali and saying all different things, and Ali's went up the stairs.
So what we're talking about there, it's a warehouse. The party was on the first floor, and that's where fights were breaking out.
It was a fight. What broke out, and just more people got involved. And
you guys were going down the stairs.
Yeah, we were trying to leave, and we got through the door, and we were leaving. Got to the middle landing, then Albert came out, started yelling at, I think it was Ali, swearing, whatever. It was all different, like, words were getting exchanged. Ali just shot back up to the top of the stairs. I followed him after it. Then LM came out, and LM got into a scuffle with Albert.
Yep.
Then I was heading down the stairs and had a window crack.
Yep.
Or shatter. Then by the time I got to the outside at the front of the building where the pavement was, there's Albert laying on the ground there.
Right.
And I ended up getting charged for his murder.
So what?
I had nothing to do with Albert. Like, I never touched Albert, or I never got into a physical interaction with him.
So people can understand, because a lot of the guests I've had on the podcast have been homicide detectives or police, looking at it from the police point of view. But so that's happened. Did you guys leave the scene, or
we left the scene. The ambulance got called. So someone was calling the ambulance. We left the scene, and we got arrested the next day.
And did you think, when the ambulance left, did you think that was the end of it, or did you expect the police to speak to you about it? Or
we knew like we're gonna get spoken to about it and all, but at that time we were just young and scared. We didn't know what was going on, and that's the whole reason we all left and all, and we got arrested the next day. And
so what happened? The police came and knocked on your door?
I knocked on LM's door. I was at LM's house, and they arrested us and said that...
how old were you at the time?
Only 18 years old, and they told us that Albert was in hospital, and he was on life support, and we we got arrested, and we all got charged for. I don't remember exactly the charges, but
did you call your parents or your solicitor, or did you have a solicitor?
I didn't have a solicitor at the time. I tried to call my parents. I asked them to call my parents, and they did. And did the interview and went down straight. I didn't know what was happening. And
so you agreed to do an interview with the police?
Oh, it wasn't. I agreed. They were going to do an interview one way or another.
So you participated.
I participated in the interview, and I made a no comment interview. Then they took me down to the custody centre, and I was looking for my co-accused. I'm like, where is he? They're like, he's gone somewhere. You're going with the big boys and trying to intimidate me or scare me or wherever it was at the time. And
so at that point in time, had you been charged?
We didn't get charged for murder. We got charged for reckless causing serious injury and some other charges. At that point, was still alive, and they came back 2 days later and charged us for murder. 2 or 3 days later, and they came back and charged me with murder.
And you had bail refused.
Yeah, bail was refused.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was going through your head at that time?
I just thought, I knew that I didn't do nothing wrong. I thought, well, you know what, they're going to find out the truth, and I'll be home in no time.
Yep.
And it didn't happen. And coming to the commutal and hearing the different witnesses talking about what they're seeing, it was unbelievable, because they were talking about so many different black guys, and they were trying to make it into one person, if that makes sense.
Right.
The black guy who pushed or punched or who made the Albert go out the window was short with cornrows. Then the next minute, another witness said he was tall with no shirt. Then another one said he was tall with cornrows, and it was.
And do you think that impacted on the investigation?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be racist or nothing like that, but I know, when they say Chinamen all look the same, I can really understand what people mean, because a white person will look at a black person and say, you know what, these guys all look the same. They can't really tell the difference, and see where a black guy can tell the difference of another black guy, because they can say, oh, this guy's tall, this and that, he's had different eyes, different cheekbones, or things like that.
Well, it's accepted these days that a witness misidentification based on race is acceptable, and it's a psychological phenomenon. I can never say that word, but you know what I meant.
Yeah, I do.
And that's people within the own race bias.
Yep.
That comes across, or cross-race effect. It's where if you're used to looking at a lot of people of similar race, you can distinguish between it. But if you have not seen a lot of people from a different race, it becomes very difficult to distinguish those people.
Yes, I agree.
I take it what you're saying with the statements and the way the things played out at court, there was a lot of misidentification, it was a black guy, so which black guy? You all look the same.
Yeah, you all look the same. It was just like, let's just get any black guy for it.
Right.
Because they even, because they try to make it into a racial thing, like the black men were attacking the white man, where that wasn't true.
Yeah.
One of the co-accused was white, Caucasian.
Right.
But the jury never heard that, because he never stood trial. All they heard, it was like black versus white. Even some people who were black at the warehouse, they try to act like they were with us, where we didn't even know them.
Right.
In other words,
it's an assumption made because there's other black people there that they must have been your friends.
Yeah, and it's like, would you say that if the person was white, or if I was white, or that all them white people at that warehouse were all friends? You know what I mean? It was, and I really never liked that, how they just had tunnel vision, and it was just like, it was just black versus white, and it was never like that. It wasn't black versus white or nothing.
You didn't see that as you didn't see it as black versus white.
No, not at all. Because the co-accused, the other co-accused, Ali, was a Caucasian. I'm like, he's he's white, and
Yeah.
other people were there were black and white. It was just people who were party goers at the venue,
Yeah.
and that's what it was. It wasn't people coming there to target like certain groups or nothing like that.
How did you feel? But like it was you initially charged with the first offence, that caused harm.
Yeah.
But then when it was upgraded to a murder charge, how did you feel about that?
I just couldn't believe it. Like, I couldn't,
So you're 18.
I couldn't believe that it was a few different things. I couldn't believe that Albert passed away,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe I got charged for murder too at the same time, because I'd never had nothing to do with Albert going out the window or anything like that.
And you knew that from the start, like it wasn't sort of...
And the co-accused always said what he said, and a lot of people think, oh, the co-accused is coming out and saying it now. No, he's always said it from day one, but I just couldn't use that evidence at my trial.
Yeah, and that's a frustrating part, and I think that because it was considered hearsay evidence, and it wasn't allowed into your trial. Now, at your trial...
But can I stop you there?
Yeah.
But the like, what irritated me a little bit, it was whatever the police said, they believed. But it was like, hold on, the police wasn't there at the time. It was the person who did it was there, and he's saying it out his own mouth, and I can't even use that. And it's like, that's more reliable than anyone who wasn't there.
That's the nuances of the legal system, but isn't it? And part of the frustration that and smarter people than us adjudicate over the legal system, but sometimes common sense seems to go out the out the door. But just the process, let's break it down. You've been charged with murder. What was the first meeting with your parents? Did they come to see you when you were?
My mum was crying.
What was the conversation that you had with her?
She asked me, and I said I didn't do it, and she believed me, and she's like, no worries, we're just gonna fight this, and the truth will set you free. Don't worry, the truth will all come out. And I honestly thought, the truth will come out,
and you were confident the whole way through.
I was very confident. I was confident all the way to the trial till I was found guilty. Yeah.
How long did the trial last for?
8 weeks, I think. It was 6
and
to 8 weeks.
Let's because we don't often get to hear from this side of it. So each day you have to leave prison. You were still, it was bail refused, so you were remanded in custody from the time you were first arrested.
Yeah, it was hard because waking up in the mornings, you just didn't know what was going to happen. Every day was a new day, and it was just tough. It was just tough, like going there, sitting there. And some days it was just like it was so overwhelming, like you forgot what was said that day.
Well, being in the police as long as I was, and a major crime detective, I spent a lot of time in courts, and I still got lost in some of the things that went before the court. So I would imagine for an 18-year-old sitting there, and look, basically your life's on the balance with this one, which way it goes. Was it frustrating?
Yeah, 100%. Like that. And the hard thing was I didn't understand the law. I didn't understand what was going on truly. Like, I was there listening to it, but see, in my head, I knew the truth. Like, I'm going to get out. Oh, I haven't done nothing wrong. But I never understood how the law was set up. The law was set up in a different way. The things that you can argue, the things you can't argue, the things that you can use, the things you can't use. And see, I had to learn that through the trial and later on with my appeals and trying to learn about the law. Yeah. Because the law is not as black and white as everyone thinks,
Now, definitely, and it's not perfect either.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. But during your trial, it was an unusual situation because you had two trials running within the one trial
exactly.
before the jury. Now, to explain that, because LM was 6 months younger than you and was a juvenile or whatever, you were considered an adult. You were being tried as an adult, and he was being tried as a juvenile.
Yes.
But because the evidence was so closely related, it still presented itself.
Yes.
Did you feel that you were disadvantaged just on that basis?
100%. 100%. Yeah, it was things that I couldn't even say, and they were allowed to say, and he was getting judged as a juvenile where I was getting judged as an adult, and we were just very close to age, and that's what I mean. Like, I didn't understand how that all worked. Like, they were saying we closed the adult courts and we opened the children courts, and I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I was just.
And you were coming from an adult's prison. I would imagine he was coming from a juvenile centre.
Yeah, juvenile.
Yeah. Your family, did they support you through the?
Every day they were there.
Yeah.
Every single day they were there. My mum was sick at the time too. She had some medical issues, and she was there, come in every day. She couldn't come for about 2 weeks, but she got herself out of hospital and kept coming. And it was a tough time. It was a tough time for my family. It was a tough time for Albert's family too, to come and listen to the things what happened, and what really upset me the most was they never knew the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what ate me for a long time. And
yeah.
It was just, I knew they heard what happened at the trial, but they didn't know what was the ins and outs of the law at the same time. But what could be said and what couldn't be said, and that's what they weren't informed about. Because
quite often people are asked to leave the courts where they have legal argument that the jury's out and other people are out of the court.
Exactly.
And,
people don't understand that.
No.
People only think, we know everything. No, you don't. Because like what you said, when it's legal arguments, everyone gets kicked out of the court.
Yeah.
And they have to have the legal arguments, and that's what irritated me a little bit about it. But Albert's family never knew the truth.
Yeah. But you can still understand the pain, and I think you said that at the start that they go through. But with a trial, and this is what I'm trying to get a sense of, because I had in my one pathetic little experience as being the defendant in the matter.
Yeah.
I remember walking to court waiting for the sentence to come down. I was walking to the court with my son, and I said, I'm feeling the pressure, and the consequences for me were minimal compared to the consequences of you. And I said I felt like we're walking to the gallows. It just felt
he did
overwhelming pressure. And I thought, my matter was so minor, and I was also very familiar with the whole system. You're a kid thrown into a system, now being judged whether you're a murderer or not. I can't get a sense of how that must have felt.
I remember when they came with a guilty verdict, and I was like, guilty for what? Guilty for what? Guilty for not doing anything. Like, I have not literally, I never touched the person. I'm like, how can I be found guilty for not even touching someone, and you just calling me a murderer? And I was like, this is unfair. And they just acquitted LM a couple, 4 days before.
Talk us through that, because that would have offered up false hope. So you've gone through an 8-week trial. You're there with your mate LM. He's been tried as a juvenile. You've been tried as an adult. The jury goes out, and they've got to come back to verdicts for him, and it's the same jury. And a verdict for you. And then they've come back
not guilty for him. Yeah.
Were you jumping around high-fiving at that stage, thinking
I wasn't high-fiving or nothing, but I was like, if they found him not guilty and they're trying to, and he's said what he said.
Well, part of his evidence is, and I grabbed him and pushed him. Like that's part of the evidence that LM said when talking about Albert Snowball.
Yes.
So you must have had hope.
I had the hope that I'm going to go home, because he said what he said and he's found not guilty. Yeah. And a couple of days later they came back and they found me guilty, and my whole world stopped. I was like, you let a man go free who said he did something.
Yeah.
And you found a man who hasn't done anything guilty for something he hasn't done. I just didn't understand it. I was like, how? It was like, it felt like the whole world twisted upside down. What was right was wrong. What was wrong was right.
How'd you deal with it? How did you deal with it at court, first of all, when the verdict came in?
I said to the judge, "Can I say something?" And the judge, mumbled something on his breath, and I said, "May history consume me, and may history free me for the crime I did not commit."
Yeah.
Because I didn't do nothing wrong, and I wanted him to know that. And a couple of months later, I got sentenced, and they gave me the sentence 17 years, and it was just. I remember when they were talking about the charge of murder carries 25 years, this and that, and I'm thinking in my head 25 years, and I'm trying to work the numbers out in my head. Then when he said 17 years with a minimum of 12, the world stopped, and
you're a teenager, and if you serve that sentence, if you survive that sentence,
exactly,
you're looking at coming out in your 30s.
Exactly, and I couldn't see the end date, because I remember going back, and I'm like, I'm innocent. What am I going to do?
Well, just on the innocence, even with the sentencing, some interesting comments were made by the judge that said on sentencing that you did not intend to kill Mr. Snowball or him to go through the window. Although found guilty of murder, and this is a quote from the sentencing, the moral culpability involved approaches the confines of manslaughter. Having said that, you have, by your violent acts, taken the life of an innocent man who went to a party and became unwittingly involved in a violent confrontation, which was not of his making. So, a couple of points there. The moral culpability involved approach the confines of manslaughter. Now, you obviously know the difference between murder and manslaughter, and breaking it down layman's terms, murder, there's an intent to murder. Manslaughter, because of your actions, someone's died, but it's not the intent. Even the judge is saying that. The moral culpability involved approaches the confines of manslaughter. Now, I'm looking at this, and this hasn't impacted on me, but obviously it's shaped your whole life. It's determined your life. How do you deal with that?
At the time, I was angry. I didn't know how I was going to deal with it. I just been found guilty, been sentenced. I remember going back to the cells, and the lawyers come in, and they're like, "Khalid, we're going to keep fighting. No, we're not going to give up." And I'm like, "It's bullshit. I shouldn't have been found guilty." And they all agreed with me, but you're the one who's doing the time, not them.
Yeah. So all the promises and all the "don't worry, we'll sort this out." Yeah. But you're the one that's going back to your cell. How long have you been in custody at that point in time?
3 and a bit years.
Okay. Yeah. So. Did you the option of appealing? Like it's up to you. You've got to give.
I appealed. Straight away.
And you agreed that the appeal was something that you were going to pursue.
Yes.
And what sort of hopes did you have with that?
I had every hope on it, because I thought, you know what, the truth is going to come out. The truth is going to come out. The truth will set me free. The truth will set me free. But I had to wait like 2 years. At the time, but it was just, I remember going back that first night and going back into the cell, and the door's getting locked, and I'm thinking, I got so many years left in front of me. It's like, I don't even know how
you're going to do it.
I'm going to do it. But I thought, you know what, I'll get this appeal, and I'm going to really give it everything I have on this appeal. And that first appeal was knocked back, then I appealed again. Then we got up and we went up to the High Court.
So the first appeal, I think it was 2010. Yeah. They rejected the appeal. Yeah. And then you managed to lodge another appeal at 2012 to the High Court.
So I got the leave, and it was
leave to appeal.
Leave to appeal up to the High Court, and got knocked back on that one too. And,
yeah. And I think at the High Court they were pushing the issue of the admissibility of the hearsay evidence, and that being that it couldn't play into your case, that LM had said I was the one that pushed him. Yeah,
but they changed the law. But the thing is, they changed the law after I went to trial, that hearsay law, they threw that.
Yeah.
They threw it out. Like if they really believed in that hearsay law, I'm like, one, they're leaving in place.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
so it was changed. So it would have been in your favour if your trial was used down the track.
Down the track, and that's what irritated, because it was like, if the people believed in that law, they would have never changed that law, because they would have said it's a steady law and or a true law, and they could see where people were going to get caught up in that law, and they threw it out. But I was charged under that old law.
Yeah, yeah. Now you had a lot of impressive people in your corner supporting you, and the Bridge of Hope Innocence Initiative.
Michelle.
Well, you can shout out to Michelle, because I know she's a strong supporter of yours. So what's Michelle's go? Where's she come from, and what's her full name?
Her name's Michelle Reuters. She works at the RMIT Bridge of Hope. Very lovely lady. She comes to all my fights. Very supportive. I look at her like a part of my family. I remember it was a case on in Tasmania where a lady was charged for killing her husband on a boat, and I remember it was a lawyer at the time who was fighting for her case, and I seen that she was fighting for her, and I just reached out to her, and I think she was an ex-detective who's turned to a lawyer or something like that, and I said to her, "This is what's going on." But I rang everyone in Victoria thinking she was a Victoria lawyer, and I ended up finding she was in Tasmania, and she's like, "Look, send me all your brief and let me have a look at it." And she looked at it 2 days, and she got back to me straight away, and she goes, "It's unbelievable what's going on." She goes, "Do you mind if I take it to a legal form or something in Adelaide?" I said, "No worries." And Michelle was there at the time, and she seen my case, and she grabbed it, and she rang Bill Dukes at the time, and she goes, "I want to help you see if we can do something." And I remember I was in a prison 3 hours away from Melbourne, and she drove all the way up, and she didn't read too much of my case.
Right.
I didn't know that. I thought she read everything, and she came to see me, and she goes, "Just tell me what happened." I explained exactly. She goes, "I just wanted to hear it from you." She goes, "I didn't read it too much about your case, but I just wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah.
And she goes, "I really believe in your case, and I'm going to jump on board." And we've been best of friends from that day onwards. And
it restore your faith in humanity, where people like that get on board.
100%, because you're fighting an uphill battle where you're fighting the system, and you're thinking, I'm fighting everyone else in the world too, and you just want, sometimes you just want to hear that I'm with you.
I can understand it, and I can imagine the fight, the battle that you had. You start to wonder, am I right? It would start playing with your mind. And to have someone look at it objectively, look at it from the outside and go, "Hey, this ain't right. There's been an injustice here." That must give you some comfort.
Yeah, well, it was, and she had her whole RMIT students working on my case, and we're having video links, and I was meeting these students, and it was so good, because it was like more people who were more interested, and they were investing their time, and I didn't even know these people,
right?
And they were just jumping on board.
Well, I saw a segment on 60 Minutes where I think they showed the work that they had done to prove that there'd been a miscarriage of justice. The innocence that. Their idea is to evaluate the case, and then if they think there has been a miscarriage, then to take the next step.
Exactly.
And clearly they've evaluated it and taken the next step.
Yeah.
So the process was current. There's an application before the Victorian Attorney General for a plea of mercy.
Yes.
So people might say, well, you've served your time.
Yes.
You've been convicted. Just get on with your life. Why is
I am getting on with my life, but at the same time, I'm gonna correct what was wrongly done to me.
Right.
Like, I'm innocent.
Yeah.
One way or another, I'm never gonna stop till I clear my name. Like, at the end of the day, I've served the time, and I served it in the harshest ways that most people would never understand.
Yeah.
But I came out of it. But at the same time, I would never give up.
You still want to clear your name.
I still want to clear my name because I know I'm innocent.
Yeah.
And I know people know that I'm innocent.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep fighting until I clear my name. If it's today, tomorrow, 10 years from now or 20 years from now, I'm never going to give up till this gets overturned. Yeah. And that's just my position about it because I believe that it's going to happen.
Well, I think you showed your position, your strength, where at negotiations pre-trial, there was an offer that if you pleaded guilty to manslaughter,
that's right,
because LM was going to say I'll plead guilty to manslaughter, but the condition was from the prosecution was that would only be accepted if you also pleaded guilty to manslaughter.
That's right.
And some people might say, well, do that, you would have probably done a hell of a lot less time in prison.
Exactly. But why would I say I've done something if I didn't do it?
Yeah.
And I have to be firm on what I believe in life. And that's in anything,
Yeah.
And sometimes what you believe firm might hurt you, but it's good that you've never bended because it's the easy road. I don't believe taking the easy road. I believe in being true to yourself, and even that's going to be the hard road. You know what? You got to take that. You got to just take it.
Yeah. Well, full credit to you. You're true to your words. Part 2, we're going to. I want to talk about your time in prison, and more from a personal point of view, how you've got on with your life after that. Like we've covered the event that led you to prison, but in part 2, so we might look at time now for a break.
Yep.
Where I said I'm nervous at the start of this podcast, please keep laughing, don't get angry, is that part of the agreement with doing the podcast is I'm going to jump in the ring with you.
Yeah, no worries.
Which I might just make the comment that we are actually recording this sitting in the middle of a boxing ring in a gym with steel roof and that. It's very hot.
It's very hot in here.
I'm glad you're sweating. Are you getting nervous about our sparring session?
I'm not nervous about that. It's just really hot weather.
All right. Well, I hope the listeners have enjoyed part 1 of the podcast with Khalid Baker on I Catch Killers. If I don't come back, it's because he's knocked me out. And remember this, Caleb, if you knock me out, we won't get to do part 2. So please be kind. On that note, we'll finish up and I'll go get ready.
Let's
Cheers.
get ready.
That was just a taste of what Khalid dished out to me. Make sure you join us for part 2 of I Catch Killers with guest Khalid Baker, where he will take us on a very personal journey about what it's like going into prison as a young man and how he remained positive, where he had every right to feel bitter. I'm really impressed by his outlook on life. We'll also play more of my sparring session with Khalid and see if I survive. Speak soon.